Okay, listen, from rent control to rent stabilization to market value, New York City's rent regulations are complex, they're constantly evolving, and it can be hard for renters to keep track of them all. There are some important laws, Nelson, that could help save renters thousands.
Thousands.
Viste.
Right. You pay over 1,000?
Yeah.
That's a lot. Joining us to share those laws is Allia Mohamed, a housing advocate and co-founder of Openigloo, a New York City-based rental platform used by New Yorkers to review landlords, research buildings, and find quality apartments. Welcome, Allia.
Thanks for having me.
Allia, thank you for doing the work.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on to talk about it.
I mean, in full disclosure, the last time you were on the show, one of our producers was like, hey, I think something is not right, and you have helped her navigate all this business. So we're putting it to good use. Okay, let's get to the nitty-gritty. The laws of the FAIR Act that just recently went into effect. Where do the renters don't have to pay a broker's fee? Explain it to us in layman's terms.
Yes, so this is a law that renters have been waiting on for quite some time. It went into effect on June 11th of this year, so it is brand new. And it says whoever hires the real estate agent is responsible for paying that broker fee. Now, prior to the FAIR Act, renters would commonly have to pay the landlord's agent, sometimes thousands of dollars. But if you're now apartment hunting as a renter and you don't want to use a broker, you don't have to pay that fee.
Wow.
Hear, hear.
Look at that. So how does that help the renter and hurt the renter at the same time?
It really helps the renter because it gives them more power to decide. Do I want to hire my own agent and negotiate a fee with them and have them help me navigate this rental process? Or do I want to do it on my own? I know there's been a lot of concerns about this harming rents going up, sort of agents are scrambling a little bit, but we're really seeing an opportunity for quality agents to step up and present their value to renters who still need their help.
I like that, because you have to lean on someone. It's their expertise, right, to sort of help you navigate.
Absolutely.
It's been a minute since I've rented an apartment in New York City, so expect a call. All right, so we talked about the FAIR Act. Also, New York City Rent Guidelines Board increased rents by 3% in rent-stabilized apartments for one-year leases, 4.5% for two-year leases. Explain what a rent-stabilized apartment is and how it can be increased, because isn't that you hear about the 80-year-old woman who has a loft in Tribeca and she's paying $2.99.
Absolutely. Rent stabilization is my personal favorite piece of regulation in New York City. There are nearly 1 million rent stabilized apartments, and if you have one of those apartments, basically you are entitled to a renewal every single year. The landlord cannot ask you to leave, and your rent increases are limited. So those figures you just listed off, those were voted on by the Rent Guidelines Board in June. The landlord doesn't choose the increase. The Rent Guidelines Board chooses the increase every single year. So you want to get your hands on one of those apartments, and it's one of the things we do at Openigloo is to try to help you find one of those rent-stabilized apartments.
Holy smokes.
And now rent-controlled apartments, right? What are the increases they're subject to?
Yeah, so rent-controlled apartments is a little bit different. You know, commonly it's mistakenly interchanged with rent-stabilized, but rent-controlled apartments are apartments where someone has been a continuous tenant since 1972. So that's where you find the elderly New Yorkers who are paying just a couple $100, and when they vacate the apartment, then the rent-controlled apartment falls into rent stabilization. That's why there's only about 16,000 rent-controlled apartments left in New York City.
So the rent-controlled is where there's a little viejito who's been living there since 1972 or earlier.
Exactly right.
And there's how many of those?
16,000. That's the estimate. So you can't rent those normally on the market, right? As soon as it's only someone who's been living there since the 70s.
Unbelievable. Okay, let's talk about eviction laws. How have they changed? What is a good cause eviction?
Yes, there is an exciting new law that passed in New York City in 2024, and this gives some protections to market rate apartments. So if you don't have a rent stabilized apartment, you don't have a rent controlled apartment, there are still some protections for you. This applies to some buildings, not all. And basically it says if you've been following all the terms of your lease, right, you've been a good neighbor, no issues, your landlord has to renew you. And your rent increases are also capped at 10%. So 5% plus inflation or 10%, whichever is lower.
Oh, okay.
Holy
Learning
smokes.
a lot. So much. I got to write this down.
I know.
When is a renter supposed to be notified when there is a rent increase?
Yeah, great question. So we get questions all the time from renters across the city. Hey, is my landlord allowed to increase my rent 15%, 20%? What are the rules? So we always say, if you're not stabilized and you don't have good cause, you have one last protection that can help you, which is that the landlord needs to give you between 30 to 90 days notice if they don't want to renew you, so they want you to leave, or they want to increase your rent by more than 5%. And that notice window depends on how long you've lived in the apartment. So we really encourage renters to hold their landlords accountable to that notice window so that they can have some time to either find a new spot if they want to leave or have that time to negotiate with their landlord.
And put a calendar alert, right? You're living blissfully in your apartment and then suddenly, like, you don't want to be blindsided.
Exactly right.
Sheesh. Okay, what are some laws that are helping renters save money? Are there any?
Yes, there are so many laws. It's so hard to keep track of them all, but there are caps on security deposits, for example, application fees, late fees. So landlords are only allowed to collect 1 month security deposit. That was a new law that went into effect a few years ago. The caps on application fees are $20 unless you're applying to a co-op or a condo.
Well, that's a whole different, that's a whole other episode
They
of this.
charge thousands of dollars for application fees. It's crazy. And late fees are also capped at $50. So I've heard some crazy stories from renters who've left reviews about their landlords on Openigloo saying, my landlord charges $50 every day that I'm late on the rent. That is illegal. It's capped at $50 per
That
month.
is cap.
It's still the greatest city in the world.
I agree with you there. I agree.
Yes.
Palpitations I'm having
It
right
is
now.
still
I'm
the
trying to think of
greatest.
all the things that I need to look into.
Oh my
Great
God.
information.
Allia, always great to see you. Thank you so much for that lesson. I mean, school is in session. For more information on New York City renters and landlord regulations, follow Allia at Openigloo on Instagram.